and that doesn't happen very often anymore. It's one of the most important watersheds. It drains into the Jefferson River. It drains into Crow Creek and into the Missouri River on this side. The Jefferson River drains into Missouri. On the north side, it serves the Helena Valley and the local economy. I really don't know how many dollars that just having the Elkhorn Mountains here and the activities that go on there, how much that brings into the economy of Broadwater County and Lewis and Clark and Jefferson County. It's enormous. If that was closed down and nobody was allowed to be there and we didn't have that opportunity, there would be lots of businesses that just disappear. The capital is in Helena, and it's just a 30-minute ride in a helicopter or maybe even in a truck to bring a dignitary or somebody out to Eagle Cabin to have lunch. And it's right close by there. Wide range of citizens hunt, fish, graze, hike, work, and recreate in the Elkhorns. I just covered that. Habitat restoration work opportunities span the whole spectrum of habitats. We restore the habitats we had a field trip last week and we talked about the woodpeckers. So we gotta leave a few snags in it when we do something for the woodpeckers. We gotta leave a few dead trees on the ground for the squirrels. We aren't talking about the insects. We aren't worried about those mountain pine beetles. We get rid of all of them, I guess. I talked about the elk and the mountain sheep and the mountain goats and the deer, and all of that.
Having moose over there?
Yes, the moose are increasing. Used to be, we'd see a moose once every 10 years. Now we see one, not every time we go to the hills, but we hear about the moose. We have wolves there now. A mountain lion got one of my horses down there behind my house this last week, so we have mountain lions. The bobcats got all our cats, so they're around. Cooperative management with private landowners. Our restoration activities, you think we work with the Forest Service, and we are, and the Forest Service is a prime partner in all of these activities. But with the Forest Service activities, you have to go through NEPA, and that takes 5 years to study it and get it right and get all the public comments and get everything in line, go through all the court dates and all of that. So we work with the BLM and the state. We have representatives from BLM and the state on our committee too. But we're working with private landowners. We had a demonstration up on Jackie Smith's ground on Mud Springs, a month ago. Steve Marks brought out his masticator to show us what it would do to the juniper trees, how fast you can do them, how much it might cost per acre, what the project might look like when it's done. He only did a couple acres, but we've been working with the private landowners because there's money through the NRCS to do these projects, and we don't have to go through NEPA and all of that. We can get going on these projects, and we expect some of these projects to be going in the next year. Recognize BLM lands as areas of critical environmental concern. That sounds pretty serious, but that just means that they need to have special care or special thoughts. Iron Mask is one of these. The Iron Mask EA just came out, and we made our comments on that EA, and it's a pretty serious thing, and they take our comments seriously. the Iron Mask is an area of concern, and they're making special, they want to make it a grass bank for one thing. So when these restoration activities are going on forest ground or on somebody else's ground, and the recommendation is not to graze that ground for 2 years, or not to graze it for the year before, or not 2 years after, that we could take the cattle over to Iron Mask and graze them. And I think that that's open for other people in the state, same as the McMaster's ground up there, but I'm not positive of that. The next one is a map of the wildlife management area. The wildlife management area pretty much covers the same territory as Hunting District 380. It goes from up there almost to Helena, down the Boulder River. It might be the freeway where it goes, and down to Lone Mountain. The Boulder Road goes past Lone Mountain and on over to the Boulder Valley. That's the southern boundary, and the other boundary is I think it's Highway 287 here. There's 5 different areas. We have the Crow Creek is the biggest. It's 207,000 plus acres. Most people here are familiar with where Crow Creek is, but in the cooperative management area, that's not just on the Forest Service, that includes the private ground to the east and to the south. And that's a considerable area. That's probably as much area as there is in the Forest Service there. There's Elkhorn is to the west, 70,000 acres, Prickly Pear, 57,000 acres. Warm Springs is to the north. There's projects going on there now. They're reviving the Warm Springs project, and a project to restore the effects of the '88 fire that was up there will be happening soon. That's 60,000 acres, and then Kimber Gulch is over here just west of the silos, is 57,500 acres. Talk about the Restoration Committee. Work to influence the timely implementation of the 13 restoration principles and the interagency MOU where appropriate in the Elkhorn Cooperative Management Area. We're affiliated with the Montana Forest Restoration Committee, and its main mode of operation is called the 13 Restoration Principles. And I guess I have them here. Al was a principal in the formation of the Montana Forest Restoration Committee, and devising these 13 principles. There were 25 diverse people, Forest Service and landowners and environmentalists and other people that had a hard time looking each other in the eye to start with, and by the time they got done, they were talking and looking across the table, and they came up with these. I'm just going to read through them quickly here. I don't want to explain them. Number 1 is restore functioning ecosystems by enhancing ecological processes. If that means anything to you, there's a long explanation. Apply adaptive management approach. We'll get into that later. Use the appropriate scale of integrated analysis to prioritize and design restoration activities. Monitor restoration outcomes. That's one of the most important things that we do, is when we do a project, don't just forget about it and go on to another one. We've got to go back and see if that project did what we expected it to do. And then you have to go back again and see if the weeds are growing, and if the grass is growing, and if it's eroding or whatever. You might have to go back in and retreat it and do something else to mitigate the problem you may have caused by burning it or cutting the timber in the first place. Reestablish fire as a natural process on the landscape. Consider social constraints and seek public support for reintroducing fire on the landscape. I planned on printing these out to give them to you. I do have some old MFRC annual reports from back in 2009 that have these, and it gives the purpose and everything, guidelines of the MFRC. I can bring them in
I've
and
got
give them to you.
the new booklets.
You do? Okay.
I'll bring them.
Well, I've had these other ones in my truck for 6 years. Engage community and interested parties in restoration process. And that's what we're doing right now, is engaging the community and anybody else that's interested in what we're doing. Improve terrestrial and aquatic habitat and connectivity. We want to, our water quality and streams are our lifeblood here. We don't want to be creating or allowing our water to be polluted or to have the roads built the wrong way to get sediment in the creeks. We want to have our fish there and all of that. Emphasize ecosystem goods and services and sustainable land management. That's cutting some timber, having recreation, hunters, all of that. Things that we can carry on from year to year, sustainable land management. Integrate restoration with socioeconomic well-being. What we do has to be good for the community. Enhance education and recreation activities to build support for restoration. If you get the public behind you, if you get the hunters and the recreationists behind you, you're probably doing pretty good. Protect and improve overall watershed health, including stream health, soil quality and function, and riparian function. And that kind of goes in with terrestrial and aquatic habitat and connectivity. The terrestrial and aquatic habitat is probably the fish and things like that. Establish and maintain a safe road and trail system that is ecologically sustainable. That's a problem. The Forest Service is wanting to close down roads and trails, and we need to keep some open and keep them maintained. And so that people can hike. We have lots more people wanting to ride bicycles now. That's new to me. And horseback riders are very important. And everybody wants to go there without seeing somebody else, and that's difficult. We, as the ERC, we added another one. The 14th principle that reflects the goals of the Elkhorn Wildlife Management Unit and management principles of the Forest Service, Bureau of Land Management, and Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks MOU. When we started, we had an MOU with all of the government agencies, and they all signed off on it, and we did too. What we do will reflect the goals of the forest plan or the BLM management plan, and the Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, what their desires are too. Sometimes that conflicts with what we want. You know, we like to cut down juniper trees. Fish, Wildlife, and Parks says, no, you can't cut them all down. The deer and the elk need those in a severe winter. So we have to leave some. All right, so I went on and on about that for a long time. Where was I? Serve as an information resource and knowledge base for agency personnel and private landowners in this landscape. we've been collecting information for 3 or 4 years. And Denise Pengroff is the Elkhorn coordinator, and she's been our Forest Service representative on the committee, among lots of others, but she's the prime. And she's been very, very helpful in what we're doing. And we have taken the Forest Service Region 1 VMAPs, and a new VMAP is coming out now. And we've taken the figures from that about the canopy cover and the types of vegetation that are on the land and how many acres are there. And then they have a deal called desired condition about how many should be there. And they would like to put it back to before White County were here. But I don't know if that's possible, but we're moving towards that. And we put all those figures together and we came up with a recommendation on how many acres in each drainage should be treated. Identify potential design, implementation, and monitoring issues during planning of restoration projects. Seek solutions early. We aren't really designing projects. We have told the Forest Service and the BL, we're working on the BLM, and we're working on private lands right now, but we have the Forest Service figures done, and we've made our presentation to them. And we gave them the figures, said this is what needs to be done, but we're leaving it up to them to design a project. It isn't up to us to design a project. We kind of leave that in their lap so that they can design it the way that they want. And when they get it designed, we're gonna do like everybody else when they're criticizing. Not necessarily criticizing because they're using our figures.
Well, actually, be working with them.
We're glad to be working with them. I may use the wrong terms. Offer the public agencies and private landowners input information regarding the potential effects of a proposed action and activity. And when there gets to be a project that the ERC initiated, we will be around looking for support. So we might be back talking to you sometime, asking for a letter of support or something. And hopefully Franklin will be telling me about this stuff. A little bit of history of the Elkhorn Restoration Committee. I might have gone over some of this. We started in 2011. We made a charter, told how we were going to operate. It's pretty simple. We're just local citizens with diverse interests. We have ranchers and landowners and just interested citizens, a county commissioner, forest people, ex-forest service people with knowledge of what the forest and how it runs. We have motorized trail people, we have horseback trail people, we have hikers. It's a very, very diverse timber industry, yes. I think I said that, but I didn't say it again. We need timber industry on there.
And you can well mention twice.
Yes. One of the reasons we got started again was RY Timber made a proposal to us with the Elkhorn Working Group. Gave it to me and I brought it to the Elkhorn Working Group. It didn't fly because it would take too long and it was too difficult because of the restrictions in the Elkhorn management plan. But we did get our committee going and we're making progress and we're being noticed by other organizations. And sometimes it's only 3 or 4 words, as is done in the Elkhorn Restoration Committee, or the Elkhorn Restoration Committee is doing this, and there's a couple lines. So there's people around the country that are recognizing what we're doing. Our goal is to have more resilient and better functioning ecosystems through collaborative restoration projects. The new Farm Bill emphasizes collaborative committees. And we are a collaborative committee. We were ahead of the time. There will be more of them. But we're there and we're being noticed. The state and our governor are recognizing collaborative committees. And it's the way of the future to get everybody together, be on the same page before you get out there, so you don't have all of this adversity. We work in the Elkhorn Cooperative Management Area called ECMA, which includes the private, state, and federal ground. I told you about that when we had the map. Why we belong to the ERC, the Elkhorns are socially and economically important to local, state, and national interests, but in need of restoration to sustain key values. For 100 years, we suppressed forest fires. And in the last 25, 30 years, we found out that we didn't have a whole bunch of big forest fires, but that our ecosystems depend on fire to rejuvenate itself. So we're trying to restore that in a reasonable, sustainable manner. Why now? Restoration treatments are needed now to keep ecosystems from diverging even more from their natural resilience and conditions. And we don't want things to get worse. This mountain pine beetle outbreak brought it to everybody's attention. But that's a naturally occurring thing too. If we didn't do anything, the world and the forest will survive. But we're human beings and we like to have things our way, so we can do things to make things our way and maybe to use some of the products and to make it more useful for recreation and hunting and for the wildlife. Our successes, I talked about a demonstration that Steve Marks put on up in Mud Springs. And that first picture shows his machine there. He worked so hard putting on that demonstration, he blew the motor and we had to quit early.
Oh. What is this
And-
called again?
And a masticator.
Thank you.
It has rotary drums in there, and it goes over, the trees can be 10, 12 feet high, and he just goes up and down and strips the branches off, and then he goes in and saws it down and pulls it in there, and it just comes out as sawdust. The other picture is from a field trip, I suppose. Looks like that was in the Eagle area, maybe.
Well, that's Iron Mask.
Iron Mask? Okay, I recognize the area. We were up there looking down into Whip Cracker,
Yep.
seeing that there's lots of encroachment and there's a few quaking asps down there in the bottom that need some help to survive. We've developed a collaborative landscape assessment process leading to planning for restoration projects. I told you about that. This is our recommendation that we sent to the Forest Service, has all the figures in it for, this is just Forest Service. We're gonna do one like this for BLM, one for state and private too. So restoration of ecosystems in the Elkhorn Cooperative Management Area. There's lots of interesting maps in here and figures and terminology a normal person wouldn't understand ever. We've sponsored field trips to broaden public understanding of the results of restoration work. I was telling you about that. Very interesting field trip. Our cooperative field trip with the Elkhorn Working Group was the 15th of July. And we went up and looked at the Elkhorn, or the Warm Springs project. It was taken off the table because of the 10-mile project came back to life. And through our efforts, we got the Warm Springs project back on the Forest Service plan of work. And then we went and looked at some projects that Steve Marks has been doing, and Steve is a member on our committee, and we really didn't realize what he did. And he's been doing restoration work, and you would think that there'd be big piles of slash and everything need to be burnt and all of that, and there isn't. Chops it up, takes it out, they take it to, where, Utah, Idaho?
American, basic American foods in,
Yeah,
Idaho Falls,
They,
Blackfoot.
they run it through their heating system, they burn that stuff and use it to make steam to make their products and to heat their facility. And some of it used to go over, a lot of it used to go over Missoula to be made into building board. But that Champion closed up, so we don't have that opportunity anymore.
When they use that machine on the trees, Tom, does that make it like pellets or just sawdust?
Just, it's pieces that long, slivers.
The blade, the shaft on the front of that machine has got a series of knife blades. So when it's moving at 2,000 RPM, it's almost like a planer in the sawmill, except it just eats stuff.
Thank you.
Down to the third one, enhanced public understanding and awareness in the Elkhorn's cooperative management area direction from managing agencies. We work very closely with the agencies, and we have a very good rapport with them. We know people, we're acquainted with the top people and the people that are out on the ground. They know who we are, and if we can call them, and they're very receptive to our ideas. And we are to theirs too. Developed a collaborative process to evaluate and provide feedback to improve Forest Service and BLM Elkhorn projects. Warm Springs Iron Mask, 88 habitat enhancement. We are a collaborative committee, and we do make recommendations to the agency. And those are only recommendations. They take them and they do with them what they want. We have a website. You can go to the website, and this proposal is on there. Anything we've ever done is on there. Our charter is on there. The MFRC 13 principles are on there. Anything to do with the MFRC is on there. It's www.montanarestoration.org. We write all this stuff, so I haven't ever gone there to take a look at that. But I think it's on the MFRC site, isn't it?
Yes, we're a page on the MFRC site.
Yeah.
That's all everything on it.
This very pretty multicolored picture is of the ECMA.
That's just Crow Creek.
Just Crow Creek?
It's just Crow Creek.
Okay. It is, isn't it? All right. It covers the National Forest, BLM, and private ground. If you could read that fine print down there, each one of those colors represents a different vegetation type. Grasslands and the sage and shrubs, the dry ponderosa pine, the dry Douglas fir, moist Douglas fir, lower subalpine pine, upper subalpine, riparian, and mountain meadow. It shows you where those types are and how much of it is in there. A lot of that is high country, some of it's low country. These are the figures we came up with in our restoration proposal.
And that's just for Crow Creek.
just showed me this today. I haven't even read it. The acres to be treated on the Forest Service, the total watershed acres available are 65,005. On BLM, it's 46,000. Private is 87,500. The treatment areas out of the Forest Service, out of their 65,005, available for treatment would be 30,000 acres, approximately half of it. 2/3 on the BLM, a little more than half on the private. What's been treated in the past 20 years, and is probably available to go back in and retreat after 20 years, is almost 10,000 acres on forest, 5,200 on the BLM, and 6,600 on the private. So the treatment areas, if you take out those ones that were done 20 years ago, on the Forest Service, there's 20,000 acres left to go out of 65,000. When you figure that they do somewhere between, they're looking at bigger treatment areas now, but it's somewhere between 4,000 and 1,500 acres at a time. Sometimes there can be more than that. A project area might cover 10,000 acres. The treatment within that 10,000 acres might only be 900. I'm getting where I'm supposed to be, but I think we're getting to the. I told you I'd talk too much. I didn't know if I'd be able to do this at all. What's next? Develop collaborative recommendations for the remaining analysis areas. I told you that we're working on, we've done the Forest Service part, we're working on the BLM and private ground. Work across private public boundaries for restoration activities. We're looking to do more projects on private ground because we can get them going almost immediately. Monitor restoration efforts. I talked about that to start with, but that's one of our most important things that we can do after a project. Well, we'll go out and see if it did any good. And if it did, we'll continue with that. If it didn't, we will do what we call adaptive management, and we will change the process so that when we do a project, it will be good. Not that it isn't good to start with, but it will be better. Provide educational opportunities regarding restoration efforts. That's what I'm doing today. How can you be involved? Are we here talking with you? You're Broadwater County Commissioners, and you're very important to what we're doing, and we want you to know what we're doing. So that when you read about the ERC in the paper, or you hear somebody downtown talking about the ERC, you'll know what's going on. And you'll be able to say, they do really good work.
Absolutely.
Opportunities for your group to engage, support for projects, members, volunteers, project helper ideas and reviews. I'm talking to the people that are here. If there's anybody interested in what we're doing, you're welcome to come to our meetings. We're still looking for some new members. So if you have an interest, or you know somebody else that has an interest, let us know. What we can offer you: more information, guided field trips on potential restoration projects, participation in reviewing projects and monitoring results, involvement in projects. I think that you're on our mailing list, and when we have a field trip or something special go on, I think you get an invitation. You've been throwing them away, but after today, you'll feel obligated to come.
And excited.
Yeah. Am I forcing you on anything here? And the rest is the fact sheet on the Elkhorn Restoration Committee that I handed out to everybody. We're just local citizens with diverse interests. And all interests. we worked in the Elkhorn Cooperation Management area. Goal is, I covered all of that. This is just a short fact sheet that we hand out to people so that they know who we are and where to find us. On the back of that is a list of our members and agency and technical advisors, and our phone numbers. Are there any questions?
Any questions?
So,
Hey, Tom, I have one. You
Okay.
said you're still looking for members.
Yeah.
What areas of expertise or interest are you looking for?
Virgil Binkley was on our committee from the Rod and Gun Club as a hunter. And he was busy doing other things and he resigned, and we need a new, we've asked the Rod and Gun Club, but we haven't had a response, but we need a hunter on there. Can you think of anybody else? It's not that Al isn't a hunter, but
You know, we're looking for the same thing out of the Helena Valley. And maybe even Boulder. We've got several ranchers, timber industry, the lower edge groups. We have one wildlife biologist. If we had another biologist of some kind, it'd be nice. And the fisheries biologist would be good. And then maybe just, we've got several just general interest public folks. One of the issues we deal with is trying to keep the committee very balanced. Because it's not like just an open-ended deal, because we have to keep the committee balanced in order to keep all ends of the spectrum at the table and participating. If you start to weigh it one way or the other, then you start to lose that ability to operate as a collaborative group that puts everything on the table and is able to sort through and come out with something that everybody can live with. You start tilting it one way or the other and you lose that ability.
And
So
your
it's a
credibility.
very fine line that we have to walk.
Thanks, that's kind of where my question was coming from, is that balance perspective.
Yeah.
how often do you meet?
we meet on the second Tuesday of every month at 1 p.m. in the forest offices across from the airport
And we have,
Helena.
in Helena, yes.
and we have, Tom was talking about the data that we use. It's basically satellite imagery data that's been ground truth. So it's pretty current, and the new stuff he was talking about is 2012
I think so.
data. So it's only a couple years, the image is only a couple years old, the data is even newer than that, to make it sure that what they say the data is actually what the picture is. What the picture is projecting is we actually have the data that shows that. And that's pretty good, because the BLM Iron Bass project that just came out, I mean, they went and did their own separate assessment of the imagery, and they were like 83%, which is phenomenal from a natural resource standpoint. That's pretty high. Most data is, if it's over 50%, they're pretty happy. And we use that, we put this Crow Creek data together. We've presented it to the Forest Service, we presented it to the BLM. We said, here's what our data is showing us. What's interesting about this is that this is, our committee did this. We didn't take a Forest Service project and look at it and say, well, yeah, we agree or make this change. We actually sat down, took that raw data, put it together, and then this committee has made their recommendation back to the agency, and that's what that multicolored map was. Those are all the opportunity areas out there. And we said, that's too big, you guys, they got all their legal stuff, they gotta sort through when you put things together. And we said, we're not gonna waste our time trying to put something together that then you come back and tell us doesn't fit all that. You can put it together and then we'll work with you on the fine tuning stuff, and things like that. So it's, they've already got their feedback, and we're working with a bunch of private landowners, and if your farm bill stuff, if you've been listening lately, the big proposal, the big watershed proposal that's going in from basically Fort Peck to Toston, the primary watershed that has the most data and everything in that whole process is Crow Creek. That's because of the work this committee did with that, so.
Nice.
And that's why the first shot was just, we were gonna work with NRCS to do it. Well, then Prickly Pear Land Trust got into it, and they were coordinating with a couple others, and it was gonna be, the 3 reservoirs to toss. Then the state got involved, and it got bigger, but still, at least in our area, the number one focus is gonna be Crow Creek. At least that's what we're being told, and there's gonna be money coming, a lot of money coming with that. So we're pretty excited about that.
You guys have done some great work here.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting us present, and I'm sorry I got so windy and went overboard.
No.
No, not at all.
If you ever need to know all the details of Crow Creek, you have all that.
So another question is, you guys put this together specifically for Crow Creek. When you put something together and you deliver it to the Forest Service, you guys know about all the litigation going on with everything they try to do. Does this hold more credibility with those groups, the Garrity's and the other groups that want to stop all this? Is that kind of an underlying goal by chance, or?
Well, we asked members from those groups to be on our committee, but they aren't interested. But yes, I think that it will. That was the reason we wanted to do this. We wanted to have our facts straight, put them forward in a way that anybody can understand, a way that we can get public support. And if we have our facts down and our reasons are valid, they will have fewer reasons to object.
They may still object,
I think, yeah.
but the standing that the project will have will be much different than if it was just the agency taking it in.
Excellent. And that would translate to the judge too, would be another hope.
Yeah, the first one of these that came out of the restoration committee was Cold Summit over on the Laurel. And we did, in that group, had a couple of the, what I call the strong environmental litigant people. They worked as part of that group. And then when they were done, somebody else in the group filed a lawsuit. And 23 organizations wrote letters of support, whatever they write in the court system, of support for that project and that analysis. The project so, I mean, that was kind of the first thing. So we're just, our efforts are to try and make it better and easier to get through that process. And the door's always open to those folks, they know it, and they have not been here yet. Not only with us, but anyplace else.
All right, well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody that's willing as a hunter to serve?
We take the applications, if somebody's interested, let us know. And we have to look at that, the balance, that whole thing. So it's not our meetings are open, anybody can come to the meetings and sit and listen, and they can probably participate. But when it comes down to voting on our recommendations, it's our committee. And we're not just a random wide open committee. We very deliberately keep a balance on our committee. So that the collaborative part and the other part of our consensus process. If you're gonna come to the table in the Elkhorn Restoration Committee, first of all, you have to be willing to put aside your whatever feelings there are and work as a group to come up with answers, resolution. And we're not a do-nothing group, but this group is together to do something. So you have to be willing to come to the table to do something. And in that process, you gotta be willing to, you can't just do a thumbs down, and I don't like it, we're not gonna go there. The rule is that if you wanna do that, you have to be able to bring the group back to some level where you have to come back to a point at which you can
You
agree.
have to have a better idea.
You can't just sit there and say, I don't wanna do that, and I don't like
We
it. And
will,
then, quite frankly, that's why some people won't come to the table, because that's the position you take.
yeah, they can't just,
So, yeah,
Shoot it down.
Mindless.
yeah, or, yeah.
our voting system is a thumbs up, you agree, sideways. I can get along with that, because I don't wanna argue, or thumbs down, you have to have a better idea.
Like that,
That's what's nice about
yeah.
And all of our recommendations are by consensus, everybody agrees. If we don't agree, it doesn't go out. It's hard to get into something by consensus, but we're doing pretty.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's certainly a lot more work, but boy, you have a better product when you're done, when you have a group that can come together and agree on that.
Yeah.
That's excellent.
I didn't tell you that, I'm vice president on the Elkhorn Working Group too. And David Brown and I've been here talking to you about things a couple of years ago. I'm the only crossover member. When we started, there was 3 of us from the Elkhorn Working Group, and 2 of those have resigned now, and I'm the only one. We're looking for another one, but
So longevity on the committees is always an issue, but that's not just with this committee, it's every collaborating from the West.
Sure.
It's one of those things.
going to meetings just isn't on most people's agenda.
No.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
Appreciate it.
guys, it's great.
Hi, come on up.
Do I get on the agenda now?
You bet.
Sorry, there's a lot
Yes.
of traffic.
Sorry we took so long.
Oh, not a problem, I was running construction on the highway.
Oh, you have to allow another hour.
Yeah, it's summertime. Oh, this is first off, I'm Brian Thompson, the land surveyor. I'm doing some work for the Smith Ranch with the Schofield property on the Old Town Road. And they're readjusting that boundary that we did last year, about this time. And the reason they're doing this is there's a bunch of grain bins up here, and we want to keep this lot separate from that. So George Schofield is George Schofield is actually picking this piece up, and the remainder on that side of the west side of the Jefferson River. So this is a boundary adjustment, and then I'm presenting to the commission for the approval. I've got several copies. You need to see it.
Which is George's now?
Thank you.
This is George's, and this is Chad Smith, the son, Dave Smith, which I do a lot of work for.
And this is the part where the grain bins are.
This is the grain bins on top of the hill, and
Right.
George has the
Right.
original place down below. And this was the subdivision boundary above.
And this is the part you're talking about, just this part right here.
Just that part there, it's about 3 acres, 2.94 acres. They're gonna go over to the Schofield tract. Really no change in the original Schofield tract, other than this acquisition here. And the reason we have this sliver is because the subdivision boundary ran along the bank of the stream. And technically, Dave Smith, or Chad Smith now, owned to at least the center line, or the low water mark according to the state regulations. So there was a little sliver in there. I know the person here thought they owned it, and technically they might have, with the stream access laws, they have all that. We're just cleaning up the leftover. I think when they did subdivision, you didn't want to go into the river for whatever reasons. And George said he might come back and actually give this back to this lot. But, technically, she already has access to it, so.
Does it stay with, does this stay with this?
Right,
Okay.
yeah, basically this, I've created these as a meander line to the river, which again, to the low water mark, which, you know, if it goes all the way to center line, if it dries up completely, it would go to the center line of the stream wherever it is. Kind of a mute point, but that's,
How many acres are in that?
this acquired portion,
No, the one behind it.
I don't know what that, I'd have to look at the subdivision plat, I don't have it with me, but it would be whatever, it doesn't affect this lot at all. Doesn't affect the subdivision at all, this is the original subdivision boundary. The only thing we're affecting is these two lots, this lot and this lot. This lot used to be like this. What we're doing is eliminating that boundary, going to that George Schofield tract. He's actually buying it, so.
Schofield is.
Guess he didn't want anybody building up here, because there's a little flat bench up here. Like that.
Good future planning on his part though, I would think.
Yeah, yeah.
So we certainly could 10 years from now.
We kind of cleaned up the road situation too. This, you know, these were actually, well, we cleaned it up with this one. The lot actually ran down the middle of the road. So now we're actually putting the road, put the property line back to the center line.
I make a motion to approve the boundary relocation, I guess you call it boundary relocation, right?
Yeah.
I'll second that.
On this tract, description as you just said.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the boundary relocation, to support the boundary relocation for Schofields. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye, motion carries.
Thank you.
Brian, did you by chance get a 8x11 sheet for us to sign?
I did.
Okay, we can go ahead and take care
Would
of that.
Nicole have that?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
no, I guess I'm running late, so you saw me from the storm.
Sure, yes. If you want to have her, maybe just bring it to us. We can
Okay,
go ahead and get that
yeah.
signed for you.
Yeah, because I know they're kind of looking to, the bank has got a loan up there, but not letting you use that property until it's signed off, so they're trying to use the deeds.
Sure, yeah.
Thanks.
Well, thank you very much. It's nice to meet you.
Yeah. Nice to meet you, thanks.
All right, it is 12:30. Is there anything else before lunch? Nope. All right, we are adjourned for lunch. Back at 1:30.
How's that?
Good, how are you?
I just wanted to get the correct spelling.
Brian,